Matthew, tell me about your spiritual awakening.
Yeah, so that started about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, mainly after some trauma that I experienced on, I would say, New Year's Day, 2022, where I ended up going down the path of taking antidepressants to try to cope with the feelings that I was having, to try to figure out what in life it was that I needed to do to fix the things that I was going through. And after about 7 to 8 months of taking high doses of antidepressants, I realized that I wasn't solving anything. I was only masking the feelings of the problems that I was still aware of. So at that point, I started to work with a breathwork and spiritual advisor, Justin Lovato, to try to number one, wean off the antidepressants, and number two, try and figure out what it was in my mind that was triggering me to have these thoughts of anxiety and depression. And at that point, this consciousness, figuring out fear, anxiety, and how that comes from the ego, learning about this person, this vessel that I am, and then just doing breath work and actually getting into this awakening and this higher self where I was having conversations with myself. I was actually noticing the ego and then trying to correct some of those behaviors and just kind of work on myself.
When did you get results? Was it right away working with Justin? And for everybody listening, this is how we know each other. We went to his Justin Lovato's mushroom retreat. Two other gentlemen got together and explored and expanded our consciousness, which is such a beautiful way for a new friendship to start. Tell me about the results, or like how you started weaning off of them. Do you still take them?
So I don't take them anymore. Kind of a weird synchronicity. Today I was cleaning out some drawers and I actually opened one up and found a pretty high dose of those antidepressants. And I'll tell you, it was liberating to just dump those out into the garbage can. But in the beginning, working with Justin, it was just conscious conversations, which I really enjoyed. It was the first time that I was able to be real with somebody and talk about the feelings and emotions that I was having. And with that came breath work. So, I think originally it was, let's try the breath. Let's continue these conversations. Let's try journaling a little bit. And I think still being on those antidepressants, I wasn't feeling much. There wasn't really anything there. So after a couple of weeks of not really getting much progress, I told Justin that I was going to start weaning off of those and I needed to lean more into the breath work. And as soon as I set that intention, I was sitting on my family room floor and I was doing one of the hour transcendental sessions. And it was the first time that I really leaned into it and I immediately started to see colors and shapes, which I think now is just some of my chakras just opening. And as soon as I started to see those colors, it was the first time that I was like, okay, wow, like I can actually feel, I can kind of tap into this a little bit more. This is something that it needs to be done with intention. You just can't just go in and breathe. So once I started to do that, I started to be more still. I started to have more conversations with myself. And at that point in time, it was just off and running. I was doing breath work almost every day. I was meditating. I was journaling every single day, just trying to do the work on myself. And within about 3 months, I was completely off all of the antidepressants, and I was well on my way to discovering consciousness, the ego, and self at that point.
So who were you before that life event that triggered you? Were you fearful and depressed here and there, or did that life event just was the first domino effect?
I am somebody that goes about the day typically without being bothered. That's pretty much how I was. I never really had any like major traumatic events in my life that really triggered me and made me feel the way that I did during that event. So for me, I was kind of just a person that not necessarily shrugged anything off, but I didn't let things bother me all that much. This was the first time that I was really bothered by something that I had to change. I had a shift in my brain that was not good. It was not feelings that I enjoyed. I tried, I think, to run and hide from them by, just taking some of the antidepressants, but quickly found that it wasn't it wasn't my true self. It wasn't the person that I knew that I was, and I needed to work on that and correct that. So
I know that with a powerful trigger, it can be as deep as a identity crisis, right? Where you're just losing context and grip for your life. And unfortunately, a lot of people turn to alcohol or drugs, or they act out in very destructive ways. Sounds like you went down the medical path, but so many people are agreeing that these medications, although they have their place to get you to live another day for some, then be able to find the holistic long term benefits. And ultimately, it's addressing the root cause of things. Like, what did you have to learn about yourself? What kind of healing did you have to do to start relieving those symptoms? Like, what did breath work do for you to start weaning off the medication?
sure. So at first, what I needed to do was work on the issue. And a lot of that was around the relationship with my wife and I. And what I needed to do was determine actually what our love languages are. I think very often you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you get comfortable, and you're kind of just living life. And for us, there needed to be more. And I don't necessarily think I knew what her love language was, and I also don't know if she knew what mine was. So once we started to take the time to look at that, we were able to work together as a couple and start to correct some of those issues. The nice thing was going down this spiritual path, my wife did as well. She started to speak with individuals. She got a coach as well and started to work on the things in her life that she knew needed to change for the two of us. So taking that time to work on ourselves and doing breath work together really helped us kind of find the path to spirituality and get us to the point where we are now that we can communicate just about everything and anything, regardless of how hard a conversation might be. We're able to work together in those scenarios.
It's amazing that you essentially were able to help each other on this spiritual path towards awakening.
Mhm.
Amazing that she did the work herself and found her community. And then I know that with breath work, sometimes you can have some very out of body, or like you call them, ego deaths as well. Tell me some of those experiences of like some milestones or some huge experiences that you must have felt with working with Justin.
Yeah. So the very beginning, doing the breath work, it made me feel very good. I could tell that it was raising my vibration. So my attitude throughout the day was definitely more positive than negative. And again, starting to see some of the colors and trying to understand them really helped me try to tap more into stillness. And I don't think that that's something that I ever really did. I'm not really one to typically read a book. I am now, but before, reading a book was not something I did. If I was sitting there doing nothing, it would be sitting on my phone, scrolling on Instagram or Facebook, or just kind of looking for something for my mind to be busy with. And the more breath work I did, I started to zoom out and I could actually watch myself doing the breath work. And that was really the first time I think I started to connect with consciousness. And I was doing this breath and I would go into nothingness, but I would still be kind of zoomed out and was able to watch myself experience this breath work and this stillness. And there was one moment actually at Justin's house. My wife and I flew down to Austin to go do a couple of days of breath work and meditation with him, where I was in the room with my wife. And what I needed to do was work on forgiveness for her, towards her. And during that breath work, I saw a light open in the corner of my eye. It was like a doorway that opened. And again, being kind of zoomed out during this breath work, I saw this figure and it walked across my eyes and it walked to the door. And as soon as I saw it walk through that light, I felt this emotion of forgiveness towards my wife. And to me, that was an ego death. It was me forgiving and forgetting about some of the things that happened in the past to want to move forward. And as soon as we came out of this breath work, I just remember I looked over at her and I hugged her and I said, "I love you and I forgive you." And it just so perfect that Justin pulled out his phone and we have a couple of photos of this actual experience happening. And it was really the first time that I experienced again an ego death where all of that shame and that forgiveness and everything that needed to come through was opened from me and allowed me to see another side. And for the first time, I think really like start to lead with love, the thing that we're all supposed to live our lives with and try to show.
Beautiful, man. That is a beautiful story, and I'm happy for you guys. And I have felt those things before when you're either doing breath work or plant medicines or just things that help you have space from your person, from that ego, from the human meat suit that goes about our day.
Hmm.
Once you have that stillness and you get to start observing yourself, a lot of times it opens up that channel or that portal to the divine. And like plant medicine journeys, it really just brings you to your knees. It just brings out the emotion and you feel the pain. And you somehow though with because apparently with breath work you're releasing endogenous DMT, but with the chemicals that are happening, it starts to heal you. It's not like
Hmm.
open up these wounds, or it's not going to address that situation with your partner and then put more hate in there. Somehow our brains and our souls just have the built-in mechanism to heal.
Uh-huh.
We have these, like for cannabis we have cannabinoid receptors. For psilocybin we have, I don't know the chemistry with that, but like it binds to your brain perfectly. It's almost like a gift from nature, a gift from God, to be able to use these tools, use these techniques to put us in a higher vibration, higher states of consciousness, to wake up.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And what for me was so profound was finding that I was awakening while doing breath work on a regular basis. I was having more conversations with my person, and I was able to identify when fear and anxiety, aka the ego, was coming into my life. And very often I found that my ego was coming in the more that I was healing, the more that I was raising my vibration. My ego was like, wait a minute, you don't want to go there. You don't want to heal. You want to be with me. You want to be in this state of fear and this anxiety. Like this is what you're supposed to be. And just the more breath work that I was doing, the more time that I was being still and doing this meditation, I was identifying with these things and understanding that there was a higher self. There was this love and this passion, and there was a different life that I wasn't awakened to until taking that time and actually doing the breath work with intention and sitting in stillness and like actually being in nature sometimes. Like we don't do that enough. And if you sit there in nature and just close your eyes and listen, like God is out there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Uh-huh.
And you do it on your Instagram, have a lot of beautiful cold exposure, like really frosty looking nature out there, but you look totally zenned out, not even phased. Like you, it's a really cool caption. Like I'll try to make a clip out of this with some of that footage on there. But how did breathwork meditation prepare you for plant medicine? Would you say that was maybe stage 2 in your journey? Did that propel you in a different way?
Yeah, I think with doing breath work and doing meditation, you can get to certain states of consciousness, but you hear others speak about being more open and aware. With plant medicine, for me, the very beginning was, trying, just like many people, you try using marijuana. For me, it's always been an anxious experience because I go very much inward during that time. And I don't actually think I identified with that until actually this last December after I did a mushroom ceremony. I was talking with Justin about this, and he said, "Well, how does it make you feel?" And I said, "I go very inward. I feel a little bit anxious." And he goes, "Well, have you ever really like sat with that and asked yourself why it is that you get anxious? What are you so worried about? Why are you not able to let go?" And for me, that was a lesson of, wow, like, again, maybe some of the ego was coming into play, and it was, don't go there. You're not supposed to go there. You're not supposed to heal. You're not supposed to awaken. Like, stay with me. And that was the very beginning of trying to understand some of the plant medicine. At the house, we have used rape before as well, before some breath work and meditation, just to ground this person, this self, to the earth a little bit more. So doing that always made me feel like the breath work was at a different level. So this past December was the first time ever trying any type of psychedelic. Again, it was just, I think, the next path and the next journey for both my wife and I to go in. Yeah, man, it was profound. Just the answers that I got, the awakening that I had, and just the things that my mind became more open to that allowed me to change some of the things that I was conditioned to that I wasn't even aware of, even though I was already doing some of this work. It really opened me up even more.
It does. They say what the microscope is for biology, psychedelics are that to our consciousness.
Mhm.
Meditation and breath work are huge, and I recommend anybody to start off with that. But you were telling me some details. It sounded so interesting. You and your wife with Justin and Gina did your wife's too, mushroom experience?
Yes, yes, both of ours.
Did he lead y'all into breath work? Like, was it like, was it everybody having a strong experience? And was it similar to our, retreat where after everybody has their journey, then you come together and it's almost like heaven on earth?
Yeah, it really was. So obviously, set and setting is so important. And that's something that Justin's very, very good at. And what we did was we actually started the morning fasted. We went to the gym. We got in some movement and a nice workout. We came back to his place. We got cleaned up. We got comfortable, and Justin pulled out the medicine. We blessed it with intentions. We went into his upstairs room where he has some sound bowls set up. So we it was actually wonderful. We were planning on doing about an hour of breath work, and he was going to be playing the sound bowls. And I would say maybe 45 minutes in or so, Gina just started cracking up laughing. And it took us all kind of out of the breath work, but it was like the perfect timing, I think, for that. And my wife just started hysterically laughing as well. And her intention behind all of this was to go in and be more childlike and playful. So it was just like the perfect scenario. And for me, not that I didn't have an intention, but I didn't necessarily know what the experience was going to be like. And I have a hard time of letting just things go. So the intention was to just try to understand what this plant medicine can do for me. And we came out of the breath work. Justin asked, "How are you feeling?" I said, "I'm feeling good. I don't really feel anything specific." He said, "Wonderful. Spend some time with Stephanie. I'll meet you downstairs. We'll take another dose of the plant medicine. And I think at that point you'll start to feel." I said, "Okay." And within moments, sitting there with my wife, just talking, and again, just enjoying each other, I started to see colors, colors that I've never seen before, both in myself and in my skin. In my wife's color, the sky was a different color, the sun coming through, and that's when I started to open up. And at the time, I didn't know anything about what those colors were. I actually started to learn more about that during this men's retreat. But I very quickly began to open up, and we started our beautiful journey just at Justin's house in the sun, kind of hanging out and having conversations while we were all going through it.
Beautiful, man. So it wasn't a wild ride, you would say, those for that experience. It was mild, would you say? Or have you had a very strong experience?
Well, it didn't start out wild. It got wild for me, which was interesting because again, not knowing what to experience. After sitting outside for a little while, I started to go inward. And again, it was a little difficult being the four of us, but again, I was very happy and I was feeling very safe. And again, just conversations were flowing, which was wonderful. But then I started to realize some of the colors that I was seeing, I almost felt were earth-like. I was like, wow, like I started to almost feel like everything that I'm made of is just dirt and water and energy. And at that moment, I think the most profound thing that happened was I saw the earth breathe.
Mm.
And I watched this happen. And that was the very first time that I felt very, very connected to nature, but I also started to feel very, very small in this world. So what ended up happening was is I actually started to get a little uncomfortable. I started to get a little anxious. I started to question, what is this feeling? What are it was a little hard for me, but this was something that Justin and I had already talked about, that there might be bliss, there might be some uncomfortableness. Sometimes the ego might even show up, which he did. And some of those are just thoughts. And if you are able to realize that it's just a thought and it's not reality, you can kind of come back to the present moment, which is exactly what we were able to do. And we went on a nice walk. We took the dogs. And again, it was just overall a very wonderful experience. But in that, feeling that connected with nature changed me forever. Was feeling that I was connected to self, feeling that I was connected to this earth. Things changed. My food changed, the water I drank changed, energy drinks that I used to have every single day, I still haven't had one since then. There was a definite a shift in my life from that moment on.
Love that. That's beautiful. And I would agree that, strong mushroom doses will reconnect us because it's our mind, that ego that wants comfort. And then so we build these walls around us. And a lot of times our comfort ends up being our casket, ends up
Hmm.
being the thing that hinders our expression or our well being. So comfort has its place. Of course, I live in an apartment and I'm not living outside 24/7, but I do want to go about that process of rewilding myself and really knowing animals, insects, reptiles, nature, just like really that process of coming home. And it makes you feel whole, makes you feel,
Hmm.
yeah, all this concrete, all this civilization, good, but we also need to, with all this technology advancement, we must continue to advance our consciousness, our soul, our and if we do that, then obviously we wouldn't be in the mess that we are in with pollution and war and all these things. And so this is vital, this is necessary to society, because if people, there's always controversy, pro gun versus take all the guns away for the solution for mass shootings. And although there's many applications and nuance to that conversation, the root cause of so many issues are because we are disconnected from ourselves and disconnected from nature, and hurting people hurt others. So if you can really become fit for service, which is why I love Aubrey's container, that name for it, then you can start helping spread the good news, the good message to your family, to your community, to your neighbors. I've made it a point to get to know my neighbors everywhere I live. Once I meet them, I greet them warmly and then I exchange numbers and I say, if you ever need anything at all, eggs, milk, if you're making a recipe, please reach out. And then they have been. So I've been getting to know them, and it's just really getting outside of your comfort zone to, well, first know yourself and then start
Hmm.
making a community, which is why I love how we all came together at Justin's wonderful mushroom retreat. How was that experience for you? You were unique in how you did not have specific issues you wanted to work on. So, what did you get? And what did you take back? And how's that integration been?
Yeah, I love actually that you noticed that. And that for me was big. So I think a lot of individuals go into these ceremonies to work on something specific, which is again, okay. And that's exactly why I started down this journey of spirituality. And I'm very grateful for that. But the nice thing lately for me is I have gone down that path. I have come out on the other end beautifully, and I don't necessarily feel like I'm healing from anything. I feel like I am more just this flowy ball of energy, just like ready to experience more and to share. And for me, it was almost a little difficult in the very beginning when I first got there because there was 14 men. Community of men around me is not vast. There's not a lot of individuals that I spent a lot of time with. And I used to think that that was something wrong with me. But again, just kind of knowing that if other people don't have the same values that you have, you sometimes seem to step back from those individuals and you start to find a different community. And maybe right now for me, that community is small, but it's growing because I'm doing this work and I'm heading to these retreats and doing things like that. But when I first showed up, knowing that I was not necessarily there to fix something, I almost felt like I started to take on trying to hold space for others, which felt very interesting to me. I enjoy it sometimes, but other times I start to feel a little hesitant and a little resistance to it because I don't think I know quite yet how to help others, but sometimes all it is just listening. And it's just holding space and it's just giving the information that, like you and I are talking about, of something that I was able to go through and experience and come out on the other end. But the whole weekend was based upon really going inwards. It definitely was about connecting, like connected with everybody there, loved everybody that was around, loved their stories. At the root of that retreat, the core of that was to go inward. It was to be still. I mean, heck, we went on an hour walk. We didn't talk to anybody. We came back and we sat in stillness for another hour. Like, I don't know when the last time it was that you've done that, but for me, it has been probably forever, you know?
I love that too. It was the overall theme of just cultivating stillness, quieting the mind, being very present. And, I love Justin's approach, like just going with the flow of things. If everybody's buzzing and conversating, he'll go with that. Like the itinerary was there and it was followed maybe at the beginning. But then after a while, like after lunch, we'll just do some more presents, some more
Mhm.
conversation. Absolutely loved it. Like it was his style and approach to it is totally in flow. It's totally like he wasn't rigid about the schedule or anything. It was really just dropping in. Nobody had their phone, and we all got to be in a beautiful house surrounded by beautiful nature. And it was at the end of it, 14 kids in the playground learning
It
from
was, yes, it really was. And that was something that him and I had talked about was again that itinerary where it ended up just changing and morphing to work with all of us. Like we had plans to do a workout on Friday. That time passed and nobody was in the mood to do any type of workout. But then, like 2 or 3 hours later, I think somebody went over and grabbed a mace and started swinging it. And then another person went over to a kettlebell and just started doing a flow. And then before you knew it, again, we were like just kids playing around with weights and kettlebells and just like laughing. And it wasn't a structured workout. It was just like, cool, like we're just kind of hanging out doing our thing together, which was like so much fun to do.
I believe you had said too that you at the beginning maybe struggled with doing nothing.
Very much so. My phone is something that is always around me, and a lot of that is around my job. I manage department, a technology department for a large company, so I'm on call 24/7. I can get a phone call at any point in time, and either I need to try to fix and resolve something, or I need to pull another person or two in to make sure that the company continues to run. And I found myself very conditioned to having my phone. And we had talked about in the very beginning. Everybody leaves their phones. If you're going to make a phone call, we did try to, have specific times where we would talk to our families, which was great. But I continued to try to keep my phone in the room, not have it on me. And there was two instances where I was sitting in stillness by myself, just hanging out on one of the couches, and my phone would vibrate. And I would laugh and say, I can't believe you are so conditioned that you grabbed your phone and put it in your pocket when you left the room. Like, even though you told yourself you were leaving it there. So, for me to just sit in stillness and to not have conversations, not have my phone, not have my brain just be preoccupied with something else, it was a bit of a struggle for the first day and a half. And then I really started to lean into just going inwards and just being present and still.
What came up for you on ceremony day? How was that day for you?
Wonderful. But I'm still searching for some of the answers, which is a good thing. I had written down an intention this time. It wasn't a specific thing I wanted to happen, but I wrote down, show me what it is that I most need to know and teach me what it is that I need to learn. And I went in with that intention of just allowing myself to be present, allowing myself to completely surrender to the medicine, and just allow whatever that needed to come up to come up. And boy, so many things happened that day. And it started off very powerful for me, which is why the whole day was as wonderful as it was. The beginning ceremony of the way that we took the medicine with tea was amazing. Christopher, our chef, ended up taking the tobacco and blessing us individually. He hit all of our chakras and blowing the smoke to kind of clear our energies. Then Justin spoke in the circle and he asked if anybody else had anything to share. I just felt the need to just tell everybody I am enjoying this experience and everybody here. I love everybody. I hope that their journey is extremely powerful. And I was just trying to open my heart and try to express as much love and gratitude that I possibly could. To kind of just set that setting again for everybody else. And I don't know why I feel that way, but I always feel like I need to help others and to hold that space. So that was kind of my way of just allowing myself to feel very clear before going in. We then started with breathwork upstairs, which was amazing as always, the transcendental. And we were all wearing those headphones, so it was like noise canceling, and we were just on our own journey with our own, music and listening to Justin lead breath. Hudson, who was there, who was assisting Justin during the weekend, was co-hosting. He channels three entities. I believe they are Palladians, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. He came over to where I was laying down. And again, prior to this, he asked if he was going to scan me, if it was okay for touch. And I said, absolutely. I feel safe and secure, and you do your thing. And he came over during the breath work, and I knew immediately that he was going to go towards my chest and my heart area. I just intuitively knew it. Him and I have actually talked about this, and we had a good laugh about it. He had one hand on my chest, he had one hand on my back, and he had a third point of contact, which was my nose. So we laugh. I was like, "Were you giving me like an Eskimo kiss? Like what the heck was that all about?" And what he has explained to me was the only point of contact that he had was on my chest. The other two point of contacts were the entities. And they were there to remove some trauma, maybe even some shame from my heart. And they also gave love. They were able to put love in. And while sitting there, I felt that shift of emotion. And Hudson finished, and I felt him move away. And I put my hand over my chest, and I could feel the heat and the energy. And I all of a sudden started to feel this immense love for my wife, for my three children, for myself. And it was such an emotion that at first I started to cry, and then thank God everybody had headphones on, because I burst out in hysterical laughter, and I could not stop. And it was just this funny energy of love and gratitude and understanding for what love was. And I just knew, I said, holy cow, like whatever energy clearing had just been done on me, my heart is wide open. And I sat up, half crying, half laughing, and I've had this thought. I've been trying to understand not just myself, but why Justin is in my life. Why was I working with him? How that all came about? What is his purpose? And to be honest, during our first ceremony, I actually struggled and had some uncomfortable moments where I wasn't sure why I was doing this breath work and why I was taking medicine and why I was trying to go deeper. And some of it was the ego, I think. And I looked over to Justin, And I received an answer that he is this teacher, this person to show more of us the way of raising our vibration and leading with love. And I remember I looked at him and in my brain I said, Justin, I understand. And he looked at me and nodded his head like he fully understood what I was just saying. And it was just this immediately this click in my head, and I stood up and I walked to the balcony and the sun hit me and I started having a two-way conversation with God. And I'm not an overly religious person. I am still personally trying to discover and find what God is to me. But what I can tell you is I started receiving messages and words of wisdom, and they were so clear that I was out loud responding, yes, I understand. I'm fully aware. And some of those messages were to teach others. It was to be that leader that I already know that I am, to understand that it's nice to be in a spot that I'm not trying to fix and I'm not trying to heal. I'm trying to learn. And it was the message that you need to bring others into this light and show them this energy and raise their vibrations and teach them the breath and bring them to the same spot that we are and just raise their consciousness. And it just blew my mind at that moment that I was able to get that type of communication and that type of message in that moment where I fully understood what it was that I most needed to know and what it was that I needed to learn.
Wow, man. What a beautiful description of your journey there. And it's such a powerful calling to teach and spread the good news and to help others, because if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, most people are in survival.
Hmm.
If you're just in survival, a lot of times that can be hell. You're stressed about everything, and those around you are probably, blind with the blind. And I was there too. This part of everybody's awakening journey at some point is essentially, they say ignorance is bliss, but that's definitely not true. Ignorance
Hmm.
is pain and suffering. And as we learn about all these things, as we have these ideas to unlock our abundance, we then can go from survival to self actualization and stepping into our power. They say, in religions, you have heaven and hell that you go to when you die, but I totally believe that heaven and hell are here on earth, and it's
Mm.
the mind. And people can be totally in completely different worlds based off the quality of their consciousness, the quality of their thought process. And there's always so many stories and exceptions, but typically if you're in an economic dire situation, you're probably going to be in that survival mode. And then of course, if you find plant medicines while you're in that survival mode, you can now just be a abundantly broke spiritual person. But at least you won't be suffering. At least you won't, spreading the message to others who are in the working class, because I'm still in the working class, but I feel totally abundant. I'm sure you do too. We live with a lot of purpose, a lot of meaning, a lot of joy, and a lot of love. You being a father and a husband, how has this spiritual journey, how has these mushroom journeys, how has this breath work, how has this affected you as a husband and a father?
It's definitely changed my perspective on things. A lot of it comes down to, again, the idea of wanting to spread the word. And it doesn't stop with me. It doesn't stop with you. My son is 5 years old, and he has been around for a lot of the beginning of my awakening in spirituality. And what I would love is for my son to learn from the things that I'm doing and be that love and that light and spread the word to others when he gets to be, of age, my age, even beyond that. And my son is showing me the changes in myself since coming home, trying to practice more of that stillness. You know, we've some of us discussed there's an app, Opal, that you can reduce distractions on your phone. So I am not able to open apps that distract me during the day, even during my work day. So not even just, you know, with fatherhood, just during my work, it stops me from being distracted. And I'm more present around my wife. I'm more present around my son. And him being a 5-year old, I think most kids just have this ability to speak truth. And it happened yesterday. I was not necessarily having a hard day, but I was energetically exhausted. I didn't do my breath work in the morning. We had a busy day, just kind of rolling through. And I know that I was a little uptight. I know that I was maybe a little bit harder on my son with some of the things that I shouldn't have been. And we were ending the evening, and my wife was upstairs and he was taking a bath, and I was downstairs, and I put on a Ram Dass meditation for 10 minutes, sat there in stillness, and I listened to the meditation. My son came downstairs and he hugged me. He sat there hugging me, and I said to him, "Jackson, you are such a good boy." And he goes, "Daddy, you are such a good dad." And the feeling that I had in that moment was the same feeling that Hudson did when he opened my heart. And I just started crying. And it really gave me the realization that if a 5-year-old can see the changes in me, that means that I must be doing the right. This integration process is the right path. And all it took for me to self-regulate my nervous system and get myself into the right headspace was a 10-minute meditation. That's all I needed.
Wow. Beautiful, man. It warms my heart too, hearing things like that. Matthew, in closing, any projects you're working on, anything that you want people to be directed to?
Yeah. Um, through my learnings of needing to spread the word, the weekend after I came home, I ran into a neighbor on a walk. He asked me about breath work, and him and two other friends who have never done breath work came to the house, and I led them through an hour of breath work. And we have a cold plunge. So I talked to them a little bit about cold plunging, the masculine and the feminine side of, you know, obviously being masculine, you know, being strong enough to get in, but then, you know, kind of relinquishing into that feminine where you are surrendering to the cold. And at that point, you are able to be at your most present moment. And in doing that, it really uplifted them, and I could see that, and it also uplifted myself. My wife and I also just recently went to a spirit animal she's a guide. She does readings on you, and she hit my spirit animal right on the head. I'm a Cody, and she asked if I was clairvoyant, which through this last ceremony I actually am starting to understand that I see people in a different color depending on the emotions that they're going through, and the feelings that they're having, and I'm learning how to read some of that. And she also told me that I'm here to also help my wife. She hosts a lot of women's retreats. This is actually the work that she does now. She mainly works with women. She does conscious conversations. She helps them with their nutrition, but ultimately she tries to help them fix what's happening to the person and make them more conscious. Tomorrow we'll actually be releasing a website that we have for a retreat that the two of I will be hosting at the house for both men and women, where we will be doing movement, we will have breath work, we will be doing cold plunging, and we will also be incorporating some sacred plant medicine with the hape for anybody that's interested in partaking in that. So just well on the way of this path of bringing more people into a community and just raising the vibration, and trying to show people that you know, spirituality is pretty wonderful. It has its dark moments as you're working through to learn about yourself, but once you get beyond that point, and you're not healing at the moment, you can really live a beautiful life.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Congratulations on putting that together. I'll definitely drop the links on that. Me, whenever it does launch and release, I'll put this on there. And I'll try to
Yeah,
get this
appreciate
episode
that.
in a timely manner to help you promote for that. Matthew, I've really enjoyed this conversation. So many gems. And for everybody listening, thank you guys so much for the support of the channel. Catch y'all
Thank
later.
you.
You're welcome.